So in this video we're going to look at the feather stitch and 5 ways to make it really pretty and decorative. So we have a video on the feather stitch, you can see that up here in the corner, and this one shows you the basis of this stitch and just 5 simple ways to do this stitch. So really good to master that first if you're not familiar with the stitch. So do pop over and check that out and have a go. And then this video we're going to look at making them a little bit more complex and a little bit more decorative, so worth checking that one out first. So I've drawn my lines on like I did in the first video, and this is just going to help me with the pattern, but it's really just about practice. So have a go first on a little sample and a little scrap piece of fabric with the lines, and then if you're familiar with it you can remove the lines if you want to. But I've used a trick marker, an aqua trick marker pen, and this actually comes off, so you can give it a light spray with water afterwards and these lines completely disappear. So if you do want the safety of the lines, this is a way that you can do that. So we're going to start off with the basic feather stitch, so I'll give you a little reminder of how to do that. So I've got 4 lines in here to help me. I'm just going to put my knot out of the way down the bottom. That will get covered up with the stitches on the front. So we go the top of line 1 and line 3, we make our little loop, we come up inside, we tension downwards, and we come across to the 4th line. And we do the same, so it's just back and forth, exactly the same. So come across horizontally. The lines do help a lot actually to get it nice and even. So I'm just going to stitch all the way to the bottom with a normal feather stitch, and then I'll show you how to add the detached chains to it. So just finishing that row. Finish off the last one just by going over the top of that stitch just to secure it in place. You can finish your thread on the back, and I'm going to bring in another colour now, so purple goes quite nicely. So I think these look quite like leaves, and the detached chains are going to look like little flowers. So you can start your thread on the back if you want to. I'm just doing it from the top because I'm on the frame for the camera, so I'm just going to do 2 tiny little stitches at the top just to secure that. Now I'm going to take my first flower just above, so I'm not coming out level with it because it all looks a bit squashed, so bring your needle above in the middle, and then we go back down the same hole. You make a little loop, you come up inside the loop, note where I'm coming up, not right down here because we need that to finish the stitch. So about in the middle there between those 2 points. Tension it towards me so we've got that chain. Don't pull it too tight or the chain disappears. I'm going to take my needle down right in that point of the green there. So I'm sort of attaching my flower to my leaf, and I'm going to do the same here. So not level with that green stitch there, so above it. Make my loop, come up inside my loop. Tension towards me, don't pull it too tight so we lose the chain. And then as simple as that all the way down. And it's just a case of putting different stitches together and making a new pattern with it really. So it's 2 individual stitches, it's a feather stitch and a detached chain, but just by putting the 2 together we're making something completely new. And if you just go left to right, you can work your way straight down. Each one attaches to the next, so I can just go across there and start the next one. Don't need to start and finish my thread at all. Can just make all of these ones in a row. I'm just going to fill that whole row of feather stitch in with the detached chains. So on the last one now, it looks really pretty, instantly pretty, this stitch, and instantly like a sort of vine with some flowers on it. So there's my last chain. Finish it off, just weave your thread through under the back to finish it, and that is a feather stitch with detached chain. A slightly different variation on the feather stitch part this time, so you can see I've just put a single line to mark where I'm going now, and a little dot every centimetre. I think I've done this one, but just regular distance apart. So I'm going to come up at the top, and I'm going to just come to the side of that, about that far apart, and I'm going to make my loop as normal. Now I'm not going to come in the middle of the loop, I'm going to come up on the line out of a third of the way between that stitch and that dot. Inside the loop, pull towards me. I'm going to go again to the side of that top one, make my loop, come down the line again halfway between that previous point and that dot, inside the loop, and you'll see what happens now. I've got sort of lopsided ones. I'm going to do a third one. I'm going to come up on the dot. So I've got sort of 3 from the centre out to the right hand side. Now I'm going to do the same again, but I'm going to go to the other side. So just down to the left now, make my loop, about a third of the way down that section, tension towards me, down to the left, up inside the loop. So we're doing 3 on each side, so we get these sort of little clumps of stems, I suppose. Let's cut the knot out of the way. I'm just going to go either side now, doing that all the way down to the bottom, and then we'll decorate it with some French knots. So that's the last one. Don't forget, finish the stitch by going over the top, finish your thread on the back, just weave underneath, and I'm going to bring in a purple, and I'm going to do some French knots on the top. Now we do have a video all about the French knot. It seems to be one of those stitches that people love or they hate for some reason. If you're not sure about how to do them, do check that out. There's a little link to that up in the corner here, and that will tell you all about how to do it and how to get them all the same size and all of that sort of stuff. So do check that if you're not familiar with the French knot, but I'll just go over it briefly. So I'm going to put one on the end of each of these little stems. So bring it up where you want the knot, needle goes away from you, thread goes around the needle. I'm going to go around twice for this because this is quite a thin thread. Just pulling the tension on this one while I pull that through, and that gives me my knot. So let's do another one. Needle away, thread around the needle once, around the needle twice. Around once, around twice. Now you can just put one on the end of each one if you want, or if you want to pack a few more in there, you can do as many as you like. Just make them a little bit more organic. Let's come down here and put some on here. The trick with them is to pull that tight before you pull that needle through, and that's what makes them all the same size. So if you're struggling to get them all nice and even, that's the trick. Pull that tight, then take the needle through. And when you get into the hang of these, they do come in quite quickly, as you can see. Let's just put another couple on there so they look like a little spray of flowers on the top, and work my way down the whole row of feather stitch doing that. So take me a little while, so I'll see you again at the bottom. Okay, last few French knots going in. It's quite fun, this one. It doesn't look anything like feather stitch once you've finished with it. You could change the length of the green stems and make them a little bit more organic if you wanted to. You could put different colour French knots on them and have little bunches of flowers. So all sorts of other things you can do again with this stitch, but that's just to show you how it works. So with this feather stitch and the French knots. So we've looked at feather stitch with French knots. Let's look at a different kind of feather stitch with some French knots, just to show you the versatility of this. We seem to have a bit of a flower theme going on at the moment, but you can do them in any colour you like and just make patterns if you want to. Doesn't have to be flowers. So I'm just going to work a normal feather stitch, single feather stitch in a straight line. You can do a curved as well. We've got that in the first video. If you want to curve your row of feather stitch. So let's just zoot to the bottom with a normal feather stitch. You're nearly at the bottom. Now I've gone a bit freestyle with this one. Again, we've covered that in the first video, so just a bit more organic, and I'll show you why that is in a minute. I just want the bottom to look a little bit more natural. So I'm going to stop that there. And I'm going to bring in my pink thread for my French knot. So French knot's exactly the same as before. And I'm going to put them on the end of these green stems again. Let's just do a couple of stitches to get that started. But I'm going to group them now, so less even all the way down. I'm going to do them a bit more organically, and I might wrap some of them twice. We can go 3 times. I wouldn't go more than 3 times. It ends up being a different kind of a knot really if you do that. And just put little groups of the knots on the end of the green stems. Now this is great if you want a rose climbing up a wall in your embroidery. This one looks really nice. So just filling in with the knots, not worrying too much about where they go exactly, just making little groups of knots to represent the flowers. You could change colours as well. You could make your thread thicker if you want thicker roses, larger roses. I'm going to fill in just at the top, and I'm going to fade them out as I go down so it looks like there's more roses at the top of the rose. A climbing rose, and less at the bottom. And I'm just going to jump in the middle and put some random ones in the middle as well, and that will make it look like a bit more of a bushy rose. So not worrying now whether it's on the end of a green stem or not. Being a little bit more organic with where I put them. So I'm going to fill in some more, and then I'll come back and show you what I've done and what I'm going to do at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. You could put as many roses on as you want, so nice and gathered together at the top, nice and bunched at the top. Just spread them out at the bottom, and by turning our feather stitch into a freestyle feather stitch, we've got a bit more of the branches, leaves kind of effect. So we've got 2 kinds of feather stitch and 1 kind of French knot there to make a really nice effective rose bush. So you can make a larger area with this stitch, even though we've been making rows up until now. So you can see here how I've drawn all of these lines. So there's 8 rows in there. We can do more than 8, but I'm going to stop at 8. And we can build up a trellis type pattern with this stitch, which looks really nice and is dead easy actually. So all I'm going to do is work rows just as I've done before. So I'm going to do 1 row of ordinary feather stitch first, and we're going to build up on that. So going across to that line there. So this is quite a wide one because I want to put some other elements in between the stitches now. So I'm making this one a little bit wider. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom with this, and then I will show you how to work your way across that set of rows, so how to work from left to right. So I'll get to the bottom and then I'll come back and show you how to do that. So I've gone down once. Now what you do need to know with this is you need to finish the thread at the bottom and start a new thread at the top. You can't really work up and down with this one. So I'm starting a second thread for the next row. Now I'm coming up at the end there of that very first stitch. I'm going to miss one out. So this is as if I'm doing a new stitch from the start, but now we can see how it joins to that previous row of feather stitch that we've done. But otherwise you can almost forget that first row's there if you like, and just work exactly the same as we've done. Now I'm coming back over, so I missed that one out and going there, which happens to be the same point as that, so I'm going to go down inside that there, just so it gives a bit of continuity and they all look the same, and then I come up at the end of that previous one. So it's going to join on nicely, and now you can see our trellis pattern starting to form. But I'm not doing anything different, just doing the same stitch as before, but now it joins that previous row. So you just have to concentrate a little bit more just where it joins, but otherwise it's the same. So I'm coming up here, which is in line with that there. Let's get the knot out of the way so you can see clearly. There we go, so that lines up with that one there, so you can use that to help you if you like. You can see the trellis pattern form. And I'm going to do this all the way across this shape. So I'm going to come back here for the next row and start up here and use these final 2 rows to put another row in. So I will sit and do that, and then we'll have a look at what that looks like at the end and what else we can do with it then. So I'm just at the bottom of my final row. You could go on as wide as you want with this, but I'm going to stop there and just finish off that last stitch. Finish your ends by just weaving under the stitches on the back, that's fine. Now once you start playing with these feather stitches, you can get as creative as you want to, and there are endless possibilities. So you could, for example, stitch each of those rows. There's 3 rows there. You could stitch each one in a slightly darker colour each time. You'd get a beautiful faded effect. But I just want to show you one more thing that you can do with that before you make that decision, because you can actually now put more rows on the top of that. So I'm going to come in with this dark purple, and you'll see here that we've got some lines in between the ones that we use, so we can use those now. So I can come up on that line there, down on that one, that's the 2nd and the 4th, and now you're coming back up in the middle. It's quite easy to gauge that now. So it's in the middle of that diamond shape, and we'll go across to that stitch, to that row, sorry, there. Come up in the middle of that diamond there, and we're putting just another ordinary row of feather stitch, no different to before, but we're doing it over the top now, and that change in colour gives this really nice layered effect, almost 3-dimensional. So if you chose your colours carefully, you could get some super effects with this. And I'm just going to do 1 row of the feather stitch down it so you can see what that looks like in this dark colour. Reaching the bottom, you can see how effective that is, and you could sort of use this, for example, you could do a brown trellis underneath and the green rose arch that we did, the rose bush that we did before, over the top of it, so it could look like the roses are climbing up the trellis. So just sort of one idea of how you might use this pattern, or you can just make pretty patterns with it because it is really beautiful, just as it is actually over the top. So I want to just try one more thing now. We've tried French knots for a bit of texture, so let's add some beads in, and I quite like asymmetrical design, so I'm just going to put some beads down the middle here and we'll see what that looks like. So I've got some gold seed beads here, and I'm just going to put one in the middle of each of these diamonds. I think you could put them any way you like, but I just fancy there. So I've come up just off the centre, allow for the diameter of the bead, get it on the needle, slide to the bottom, push it down, and then just take the thread down the other end. Now let's put one in it. Let's put one in every diamond. So that's really lovely with the addition of the beads action. I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to put that top one in because I've not put the bottom one in and finish my thread off. Now you could just keep going with that, you can keep adding, and you could put more rows on, you could put more beads on, you could put some French knots in, so the world is your oyster, as they say. So really beautiful feather stitch trellis. So with this last one, I just wanted to show you what it's like if you just put everything in there together all at the same time, and how beautiful these patterns can become. So I've started it. You don't need to watch me do this stitch again. So it's another feather stitch down here. I'm going to work a second row. I'm going to do it slightly different this time. And I'm going to start in the other corner, and this will give me a symmetrical pattern. So before, the patterns have just worked from left to right and you don't get an even pattern on either side, but this will give you a symmetrical pattern. So I'm going to go back the other way. So I'm starting in the top right corner and I'm going across 2 rows and coming up level with those stitches. So it's exactly the same stitch, I'm just doing it the other way around. So now I meet that central one there, and you'll see what happens in the middle is we get a different pattern now. So I'm still just going left to right and left to right, but I just started in a different place. But the middle makes quite a nice heart shape. So if you were to do this the other way up, you get hearts going down, which might be quite nice. So I'm just sort of making myself a different pattern. Let's get rid of that knot, just by doing it symmetrically. So let's zoot all the way to the bottom with this stitch, and then we'll have a look at what we can add to it. So I finished 2 rows, mirror image of each other now, and you can see what a beautiful pattern that makes. So let's put in some of our detached chains that we did in the first stitch. I'm going to do those in green. I'm going to put them in the same place, and you can just start to build up really pretty patterns. So if you make your original stitches a bit bigger, you can fit more things in, and you can just have a really good play with this, have a bit of fun with it. So there's a detached chain in there. I'm just going to go all the way down one side with that, so up and down, same point, make a loop up inside the loop, finish it right in that corner there. So I'm going to work down this side, and then I'll come back to the top and work down the other side, and then we'll see what it looks like. Just putting in the last detached chain. I'm going to stop there, and while I've got a thread in the needle, I think we'll put some beads on. So I'm going to put my gold ones on again. Just thread it onto the needle to the bottom. Now I could either take it out with the stitch, so follow the stitch, or I could do it straight up the line. I think I'll take it out with the stitch just to extend it a bit. I might miss every other one out. Let's see what that looks like. That's quite nice. So we'll go around the whole shape, putting a gold one on every other stitch. I knew it was too good to last. Hello, Ginger Cat. Nearly finished, mate. Can I just have a few more minutes, please? Can you get your tail out of my beads, please? Oh, it's doing so well. That's it, you sit down there, out of the way. Okay, so I finished my gold beads, and I now need to move the cat because he's sitting on my threads. So I'll be back in a moment. Sorry, buddy. Oh dear. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh, there we go, buddy. Nearly finished. Can have some food in a minute. Right, what am I doing? Okay, so I've reclaimed my space, so let's put some more beads on because you can't have enough beads, let's face it. So I'm just going to go up the middle now with some dark ones, and you can just build up the pattern. Now I'm making this up as I go along, really, but if you wanted to plan it out, you could plan it, but I think it's always worth having a little go first to see what can be done with it. If you're a bit of a planner, you can work it out, but just picked my sort of colour scheme. I'm just going with that, so I know that all my colours will work together. So just straight up the middle with my purple beads. So the only thing we haven't put in now is some French knots, so I think we'll do those around the beads. A little bit more detail in the middle, and I think we'll go 1, 2, wrapping them twice, and then let's put 1 on the top. See what that looks like. Yeah, that looks alright. So up the middle with the knots. And then we'll see if we think that's finished or not. Okay, last few French knots. Now I was going to put some more stitches in there, but I actually think that's looking quite nice. So I'm going to leave it. Knowing when to stop is always the hard thing to do. And then I'm going to get all the blue lines off. I'm just going to spray it with water, dissolve the blue lines so you can see what they all look like, and then we'll have a look at them all together. So I've just given it a spray just to get the blue lines off, so it's still wet at the minute. I'll just leave it to dry, it will be fine. So you can see them all together here and how gorgeous they look. It's really fun to play with this stitch. Once you've learnt the basic stitch, you can just go and play and add loads of stuff and do loads of things with it. So really a lot of fun, this one. I've enjoyed it anyway. And you can see them all together there and how beautiful they look. So I hope you've enjoyed that little foray into feather stitch. Don't forget the other video as well about the basic feather stitches, and do give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video, and you can click the subscribe button and the little bell, and that will bookmark us so you can find us again, and check out all our other videos. We've got loads of stuff here. We've got a really good one for you right here, and we'll see you in the next video.